extremely intense morning today. So initially I had a dream where there was a big open pit mine, like the Bingham copper mine, but a bit drier and more silty the sand was. And in the first one, it was one spiral down, okay? And then it became a connection between an outer ring and an inner ring. And I started to meet people who were basically transitioning between the rings. And then eventually there were little animals. And these animals looked like liver flukes, which are basically a type of parasite, and a series of small little parasite looking, probably single-celled organisms, or small multi-celled organisms. Now, what this reminded me of was a video I watched a long time ago about the Shaman project, which I think it was called, where a scientist from America, or the United States of America, I apologize, went to Brazil to try. Their goal was to capture shamanic medicine from around the world. And, for example, he had a dream about this jaguar and had this incredible experience, and there were a series of other visualizations in it, which I won't get into. While he was down there, one of the women, little girls in this tribe, went into a coma, and the shaman went around and gathered like whatever, 100, 200 things, and they had to heat them and steam and boil them together, and then this one was brought out of a coma with it. Well, they did some scientific method on it, and they found out she was in a diabetic coma, and there's no medicine in allopathic Western medicine that can bring someone out of a coma, a diabetic coma, like this. I don't know, at least that's the way the documentary presents it. So he shipped the compound to the United States to a lab. I think it was University of Chicago, but it was a powerful school, a powerful research school. And they analyzed it. And they tried any one of the separate compounds within it and could not figure out which one it was. So the investigator asked the shaman, he said, which part of these ingredients is it? Which ingredient is it? And the shaman, of course, naturally said, well, all of them. Now, there's several pieces which this ties to, which I'd like to mention. So we've already started to talk about divine marriage, masculine, feminine, mechanistic science, separation, and systems science, and union, okay, and togetherness. And only together can we reach it. Well, this is a great example of how only when working together does the combination basically provide healing in a systemic way. And that's what I deal with in my job and have been dealt with for decades. I deal with systems theory. I deal with large infrastructures. Okay, I used to call myself the internet plumber. Okay, which means I literally helped build the internet. I used to joke, in the 2000s, I helped Al Gore build the internet with, of course, the Princessa. And ironically, Al Gore wasn't there, right? That was a joke. But no one knows who Al Gore is anymore. So I tell the joke and the kids just look at me. They don't get it. So I have to update it. So I'll find out, maybe I'll say me and Donald Trump built Twitter. They would understand that. So Jack Dorsey or something, I don't know if they'd get that either. There's not much they would understand. I mean, I'm going to have to upgrade my analogies. So, again, to tie this together, the dream reminded me of this shaman project because near the end of the visit, or at least this section of the documentary, as my, memory of I don't want to say questionable fallibility, but the same fallibility of all of us around my age. And he asked the shaman about the dream in the end, and the shaman is the jaguar, and there were dreams about DNA. And what they found was the shamanistic description of it and what was in the dream, what we discovered scientifically, were similar. Now, how is that, and how is that possible? I can explain to you using the nature of reality. But this isn't the time for that. That's a more drawn-out explanation, although it's very simple. And I'll give you the kernel of it here. Here's a question I ask people. Can you remember before you exist? And most people say, some people who've had visions and things like that and dreams of past lives will say, I remember before I exist. I said, really? So who remembers that? Oh, well, I remember. You mean so before you, the consciousness? No. So I'll ask other people, do you remember after you exist? Well, no, because you're not there to remember that. So for all intents and purposes, 100%, you're immortal. And that's a fact. You've only ever known of your existence. And so some mechanistic people, or people who are very, the older they are and the more entrenched they are in the material or objective reality, the harder this is for them. Young people get this very easily. You are the only thing you've ever known to exist, and anything you know of outside of that was conceptualized by you for you to accept it. Example. Oh, I read history books. Who read history books? You did. Who told you about the history books? You did. So all of your senses, in fact, are a function of you, and anything you know in the world is a function of you. Okay? And that is the nature of reality. That is a fact, and everything else we'll ever talk about will be a supposition built on top of that idea. That is really the kernel of Advaita Vedanta, the kernel of subjective science, or the science of you. And that's where philosophy comes from and religion. And that's where the definition of God actually comes from. It's a definition of that which is the same in all places and all times. Okay? And that's the absolute, the infinite, or the I am. I am the great I am, as it says in the Hebrew tradition or Abrahamic tradition. So, that is what we're here today. So that dream was about parasites. That's why I mentioned it, and that's what ties these all together. And I've been doing the cleanse, and what we would say, this is not a fact, okay, this is a supposition. Is it a supposition? It's an analogy, maybe? Is it a story? Is it a parable? Is it a myth? There's a conversation for this. And this, what I will say is this is how I visualize and symbolize the releasing of the parasites in my colon and in my body. And there's arguments out there that mental illness and a variety of things are based on a systemic imbalance within the human condition, which allows, now some people call this possession. Oh, he's possessed by a demon, right? You'll hear that, right? I'm not going to say where they are or where they're not. But as far as they're concerned, the guy who believes he's possessed by a demon, who's perfectly sure of it, as far as they know, they are. There's no way you can disprove this, okay? Now, the systemic issue may be when their pH and all these things come out of balance. They're now, like, that's what causes their brain to not function properly. Or not just their brain, but the entire system, right? The endocrine system, there's all these different systems involved. And I'm not a doctor, okay? Although both my parents are. I don't play one on TV either or on YouTube. So, I do understand science. I got good grades in biology. But again, I'm not an advanced science practitioner either. So let's not pretend that I'm here running, running experiments. Although I can run scientific method on basically healing, which I've done for over a decade. And so what I can tell you is from my studies and from cancer studies and things like that, visualization and creative visualization techniques such as this allow one to heal. And one of the, paradoxes of that is if you imagine fighting and destroying the cancer, that might not be as effective as imagining releasing or being in balance and relaxing, and so that the different types of symbiotic organisms in your body become back in balance. And that's the argument. And that's what I will argue with you here today. I'll begin to present a case for, is that systems theory is the present and the future. It is basically the now, and it is sattva in Sanskrit, which is equilibrium. And that's what we're moving towards, because humanity are becoming spiritual adults. During spiritual adolescence, everything is about growth. When you're a teenager, your parents just dump resources into you for no gain for decades, okay? And you don't start producing, you're still consuming, and for a young man up until your 20s, even if we start working, which we do, and we work hard, our bodies can really produce even before the rest of us is ready. We can produce a lot, we can produce excess. You want to use that, but you're going to pour more resources in than you're going to get out. Little 25-year-old boy, man, is going to eat like you can't imagine. I could literally eat a whole pizza and a dessert pizza and then not get a stomach ache, not get any skin issues, not get any elimination issues or diarrhea, and then not gain a pound. Yeah, that's right. That lasted up until I was about 20. It was actually only until I was 20-something, because once drinking came in, my entire chemistry changed, which is, again, a longer conversation. So, we're here to say that my cleanse is working, that visualization techniques are important, that systemic balance and organization is useful, and then the divine marriage in this case is between yourself and all the symbiotic organisms which support and protect you. Ironically, or interestingly is probably the right term, the mitochondria, or the powerhouse of the cell, where you metabolize in your cell, is actually the DNA. They believe it was a symbiotic organism which has joined the cell or multicellular biology at some point earlier in the life of the human being. So most of humanity is, you are really an amalgamation of systems. Stay in balance. Hariom. God bless.